You will start off with Dreamers Club because we're talking about being undocumented. What is the Dreamers Club?
So the Dreamers Club at school is for students who identify as undocumented or are allies. So we welcome anyone who wants to join the club, and it's been awesome. We had our first Dreamers Awareness Week in April this year. So we hosted a panel, we did stuff in the bulletin, and we hope to be able to bring it onto campus once we are in person, to have activities during lunch and continue with the panels and connecting students with each other.
All right, so you get to use what you've learned as both as a DACA recipient. And actually, do you have any DACA news for us?
Yeah, so today it looks like my renewal is getting processed. So they took the money out of my bank account. That's how I know. It's $495 I pay every year and a half, which is a lot of money. Like every year and a half, I will say that it's not easy, or it hasn't always been easy to be able to pay for it. And yeah, it looks like hopefully soon I'll get something in the mail, but I know that there's a huge backlog of DACA applications right now and renewals. So you have to get on that, like as soon as you're able to renew, you have to do it within like a few days of that date, because then if you end up on the backlog, you could potentially lose your job since your work permit does expire, and any other protections that you have under DACA. Like if it doesn't get renewed in time, there's very little that you can do. You just have to wait. I've never had that experience. And my siblings haven't either, but it's something that we consistently think about because, we can't imagine losing our jobs and our livelihoods. So we're constantly texting each other like, hey, when's yours up for renewal? Like, we're always checking in with each other about it, and we tell each other when we've submitted it. And then the next steps are basically to get fingerprinted and to get pictures taken, which I do have to take a whole day off to do that off of work. So yeah, it's like a whole process. And I can't pick my appointment time. Like they send you an appointment time, they tell you when to go. And it's kind of scary because if you go to the immigration office, you never know if an ICE raid is going to happen. It's a big deal. So oftentimes I text folks the address, where I'm going to be, what time I'll be there, and I let folks know just in case. I think I've actually texted you, Mr. Carr, in the past. So it's something that my family and I take like super, super, super seriously, because it's just like, it's a big process every year and a half to do it. It's like emotionally taxing.
And I remember when some of the Supreme Court decisions were happening, and
Yeah.
like it would be like, I remember our whole Block 5 crew was ready to check in on you and make sure that as news came in, you weren't alone, because
Yeah.
as those decisions were happening, it's a difference of you being able to be here and do what you've worked so hard to do or not.
Yeah, it was during the pandemic, and I just remember I would check I think it was Monday? Yeah. I think every Monday I would check, yeah. And then I would go back to sleep because usually like it was so early that I was like, okay, there's nothing. But the one time, of course, I never sleep in, but the one time I was like, okay, it looks like nothing's happening, I'm gonna sleep in a little bit. I wake up and there's like 20 messages on my phone, and I'm like, oh no, something's happened. Like I seriously was like, this can't be good. And the first message I saw was from Ms. Majors, and she was just so happy and so relieved. And I'm like, I just remember feeling like, yeah, it was just great. It was really awesome that I woke up to like 20 super supportive messages. People like had called me and I had missed their calls. But I distinctly remember Miss Majors message and just being like, okay, like I'm going to be okay for the time being, and my siblings and I are going to be okay, and my students who have DACA are going to be okay. That also was a day that we found out DACA was going to allow new applicants. So that was huge because in the Dreamers Club, we have students who have been waiting. We have alumni who have been waiting to be able to apply for DACA. So immediately I was like, okay, I'm happy, but let me start messaging my Dreamers Club students that they can start applying. Let's try to get money together. Let's try to get everything together for them. So um, that was like the next level of like, okay, take care of my family. I'm gonna go take care of my students. And that was probably the best part is explaining to them that they were now able to apply if they qualified, and that their siblings could too, or family members, and that we could help them. So that was really awesome.
Yeah, huge news, and it's, I want our audience to kind of realize it's hard to realize everything else that comes from there. Like, what if there was a decision the other way, how that would uproot your life. And so it's huge.
Yeah, and most importantly, like for me, it was like my students' lives, right? Like I've I'm done with school. I've had years to have stuff on my resume for a career. To think about my students not having those opportunities, like that's the part that I think hurts me the most. So when I found out that they were able to apply, I was just like, that was the best part. I'm like, okay, like I can I can finally like, oh, breathe a little. But we also have folks who don't qualify for DACA, and that was the next thing I had to sort of think about too. Is like, okay, how do I support students who don't qualify, or maybe they qualify but their sibling doesn't, or a situation like that. And I think that's been really, really challenging, um, because I just wish it wasn't like that. I really do.
Okay, so I want to actually go back to something you said. You talked about who messaged you and who has kind of been a part of this journey, or somewhere along the way. And you talked about Miss Garcia, and you talked about Miss Majors, you talked about Mr. Carr, but you don't call us that anymore, do you? You're a colleague now. You're a colleague. What I mean, you still you a college graduate, and you still calling us by our last name? What?
So I still sometimes I still feel a little weird. Like for Miss Garcia, I think I call her Miss Garcia more than I call her by her first name. Same with Miss Majors. I think I consistently call her Miss Majors. Yeah. I think with you and I, Mr. Carr, yeah, I think
You
I'm
call
more
me
used to
Carr
calling you by your
most.
first name now.
I think you say Carr more than anything else. You don't say Mr.
Oh,
But you do
yeah.
get a TJ in there.
Yes. And then Miss Bokrin too. I call Miss Bokrin a lot. So I'm still getting used to it, but it's pretty funny because even when I was seeing like Miss Garcia in college, I would never ever dare to call her by her first name ever. Like I was like, that's off limits. So, but then some of our advisees, so Mr. Ramos, some of our advisees, like they will not call me by my first name. Like they're like, nope, like
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just really funny because I'm like, no, it's fine. You could call me by my first name, and they're like, no,
My
no.
rule is you need to have a degree. So
Oh,
a diploma
nice.
ain't good enough. If you get a degree, you can call me by my first name. Then you're on my level, and you're where I wanted you to be. So at that point, you can call me by my first name.
I also don't think a lot of people know how to pronounce my name.
Oh, that's true.
So there's that too. I'm like, maybe my last name is just easier.
So now you probably work with Shalyn the most. That's probably the partner that you work with the closest.
You mean Ms. Bokrin?
Yeah, her. Uh,
Yes,
ethnic studies.
she's my teaching partner in ethnic studies. So we split the ninth grade, and she has half, and I have the other half, and we are definitely collaborating the most on campus. Yeah, all the
So,
time.
so tell us more. So actually, let me go back. Oscar, uh,
Yeah.
didn't you? I don't remember if the ethnic studies class got started with you, but I remember you planting the seeds, sending the information to try to have an ethnic studies class. So Oscar,
Yeah.
I know that you made many, many attempts to get us to have an A through G ethnic studies class. Could you tell us a little bit about making that foundation for us to even have that class?
Yeah, it took years to get people on board with that. And so, when I first came to Preuss, I was the AP European History teacher, and I know that that's a class that kids hated. I think they maybe resented being made to take AP Euro in 10th grade. Is kind of like, it kind of felt like my job was like to break the students and then like humble them and then rebuild them back up in the second half of high school. But so I went to Texas and came back. And when I came back from Texas, I was teaching ninth grade Western Civ with Ms. Bookrin. And so, and Western Civ had always been sort of like a pre-AP Euro class where the kids were learning the same content twice, which I think is part of why they hated AP Euro, because they were like, we're doing the same thing, it's just harder and we hate it, and it's also Europe, so why are we doing this? And so it took years of conversations to get administration to be open to the idea of ethnic studies. Part of that came from when we started doing Model United Nations in ninth grade. And so the idea was, the hook for admin was that we're developing the kids' skills, and as they develop these skills, these academic skills, the research skills, the writing skills, they'll have success in AP Euro. And we're teaching the world history, emphasizing the skills more. Like, okay, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Okay, great. And then like a year or two later says, okay, since we're focusing on skills, maybe we can get away from some of the Western Civ curriculum and kind of focus on other parts of the world too, because it'd be a way of tapping into kids' interests by focusing on Latin America, Asia and Africa, but we're still emphasizing the skills that will bring them success in AP Euro. Like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so once they did that, it's like, you know what we should do in ninth grade? We should do ethnic studies in ninth grade and still develop them the academic skills for them to have success in AP Euro. But we would do it if we could get the A through G requirement met. If we can have a world history credit for ethnic studies in ninth grade, that way they get them the A category, and then they still are being pushed academically, and they can, AP Euro won't be that big academic jump that it would be, and it would be fresh instead of feeling like you're doing the same course 2 years in a row. So they said, okay. And then Ms. Booker and I started doing our research on, okay, so what have other schools done in California to get the world history requirement met in ethnic studies? And we saw what the state of California had approved, and they were just really basic classes. And we almost felt like, we can't do that. We can't just do like a California history class and call that world history. And so our first draft, I thought was great. It was like focusing on is like identities and institutions of power through like political institutions, economic institutions, cultural institutions, immigration history. So why people came from around the world to the United States and what was going on around the world, again, the world history part that would prompt people to come here, how they settled here, and then how they advocated for themselves as communities. It was like, I thought it was a very optimistic look at ethnic studies. Sometimes people look at ethnic studies and it's kind of branded negatively by people with bad intentions, as they're teaching kids to hate America. And I don't think it is. I think it's empowering people to understand their position in this country through case studies of how different communities have organized to advocate for themselves. And that's like in line with democracy, and civic involvement. And so we applied for that. I was proud of it. And the state of California said, no, it's not world history enough. And we're like, you approved California history for world history, and this is not good enough. And so we did a second time and said, okay, we'll take a comparative approach where, everything that we're learning about, whether it's identity or institutions of power or immigration, it'll be the United States compared to South Africa and Mexico, 3 different parts of the world, racial identities, institutions of power, a comparative approach, immigration to all three places, a comparative approach. And they said, I remember they said no, because the fact that you're focusing on Mexico and Africa might make it too easy for Black and brown students. That was their rationale, that it might be too easy for them because it's focused on something that is too close to them. So I'm thinking, do you assume that European history is just too easy for white kids, and that's okay with you then? But in any case, so that's kind of where that ended. At that point is when I left for Maryland, and so I just kind of left Angelin's desk and said, try again. And I guess they edited it again and tried a third time, and I guess you got it, because that's what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, so we ended up finding a school who was launching ethnic studies and kind of seeing what they were doing and adapting elements of it. And then now in California, you have to have ethnic studies in high school. So that helped us. Like, I think that's probably the reason why they were like, sure, you can do it. And we were one of the first schools, I mean, I think we still are, that did the pilot for ethnic studies in San Diego. Wow. So we're going into our third year, but this past year was our second year, and the year before that was our first year. But it's really cool because now a lot of other schools are starting up their programs, and we're really excited to see where it goes. Because I think Ms. Booker and I we definitely follow the curriculum, but we tried new things, and we hope to be able to share that knowledge with other schools and be able to, I always tell her, I'm like, we're going to take this show on the road. I think we really want to do that this upcoming year and years to come.
One place you can bring it to is Montgomery County, Maryland, because the school that I moved to here, I switched schools here.
Nice.
Yeah, my new chair is a Black woman who wants to develop an ethnic studies program for our school. And I said, hey, I was part of creating one. Never saw it actually come to fruition, but I was in the early part, and you're carrying it out and adapting it. So at some point, you might be consulting for us out here, I think.
Let's do it, and we'll bring Mr. Carr, just because his advisory group had ethnic studies this past year.
Okay.
So he can be our advisory viewpoint of it. Yeah. How did you feel as an advisor? But yeah, we would love to go. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not turning down a trip. Hopefully Zoom doesn't ruin us going on a trip. Like, oh, you can just consult from Zoom. No.
That's no good.
We need to go to DC.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no.
So speaking of looking at multiple countries, looking at South Africa and Mexico, well, also, sorry, it's funny that they would think that we have any students from South Africa. Like, there's so many immigrants to California from South Africa. But I'm gonna leave that alone. But the Olympics are coming up. And so here's a question. As Oscar, you are first generation?
Second generation, yeah.
Second generation. And we just heard from Indira about your immigration story. And my ancestors came over Middle Passage. I've done some DNA research to see where, looks like about Ghana, Nigeria-ish, according to 23andMe, though that changes sometimes, that's another story, but I like Ghana, so I'm sticking with it. So who do you cheer for in the Olympics? Do you cheer for Team USA? Do you cheer for them at all times? Is Mexico number one and then USA? Does it depend on the sport? Does it depend on who's competing? Who's your backup? If Argentina is playing Italy, I know, Oscar, you have some Italian parts of your family. How do you decide? How do y'all decide who you cheer for the Olympics?
So for me, it's funny because my initial reaction is say I go for Mexico, but that's not true because for gymnastics, as gymnastics, women's gymnastics has become a lot more, women of color and Black women, I cheer for them. So it's because I identify strongly as a child of Mexican immigrants, and and as a brown person who like visibly, no one mistakes me for white. I stand out, you know, in most crowds. And so that's kind of like my frame of mind in terms of how I see myself in relation to society. People sometimes assume, because I talk the way I do, that, you know, like maybe I have a less of an identification with my Mexican background than I do. And so, you know, but I do. And so when it comes to sports, I mean, if I don't see it's way too late for this country to be fielding all white teams in anything. And so, which is why I don't really cheer for the men's soccer team, because they don't reflect the America that I know. And because, especially soccer, because American soccer is so focused on the private team circuit, it's just wealthy families. And so that surely does not reflect either my own Mexican community or any other immigrant community. So yeah, I don't feel any sense of, they don't represent me, honestly, the US soccer team. Women's gymnastics, Simone Biles, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm not Black, but the fact that
Moroccan, you've been mistaken for Moroccan.
I get mistaken for lots of things. But the fact that, you know, I feel like I can identify with their struggle of advancing themselves in a space that is not welcoming to them in this country. And so, yeah, I cheer like hell for them. And so, you know, when it comes to soccer, it's Mexico, because, you know, there's wealthy classes in Mexico, but there's still, when I see the people on the Mexican team, they look like people that I know. They look like people in my family, people in my church, you know, my uncles. Hell, back in the day, Valencia looked like me. You know, he's old now, but like, you know, so, you know, so there's that. And so that's kind of my frame of mind whenever I see most things. So when it comes to like World Cup soccer, like I always go for the colonies, except for Argentina. When it comes, because Argentina does not think of themselves as a colony, they think of themselves as European. And what the president of Argentina said something just racist as hell the other day, where he said something like, you know, Mexicans came from the Indians, from the Indians, and Brazilians came from the jungle, and, you know, we came from Europe. Okay, well, fine, then you're Europeans, and I will never cheer for Argentina. So yeah, Argentina, Italy all the time. Every day. Anything outside of Europe, whoever looks more Mexican is who I'm going to cheer for. So I remember back in the World Cup, like Iran, full-on fan of Iran. Morocco, you know, any brown country, usually against most European countries. Within Europe, it's like, who's got the most Muslims and Black people? So usually France, you know, sometimes England, unless England is playing Italy, like they were last week. Spain is mixed, you know. Usually, if it's Italy, Spain, I'll probably go for Italy, honestly. But if Spain wins, then it's problematic that I might feel okay about that, because they're the colonizer. But, you know, my family's close enough to Italy that I will usually go for Italy in most cases, but if it was Italy, Morocco, or Italy and any kind of North African, you know, I'll be talking some trash to my mother-in-law in that situation there. So, you know, it's complicated, but yeah, I understand myself as a, you know, I don't like saying minority, because we're not a minority anymore in California, but I understand myself as someone who is not typically represented in a space, marginalized, you know, and so I identify with other marginalized people, or at least I want to stand with them. So for me, coming to Maryland is weird because there's not enough Mexicans out here, but there are a lot of Central Americans, and they're cool, and they're basically going through what we went through 20 years ago. So like, you know, I feel like I found my people, even though I'm not Central American. So that tends to be the way that I view myself.
What about
Yeah,
you?
you summed it up for me. I mean, I'm a huge soccer person. Like, that's probably all I watch. Like, I watch a lot of soccer, and I grew up watching it. My dad plays. He still plays. He plays with the veteranos down at the park. He plays pickup soccer every Thursday, so I know I can't call him. He will not pick up the phone for hours, and Sunday mornings. That is his time. So I love soccer. I'm a big, big Mexico fan. Like, I've gotten into interesting situations with US fans at US Mexico games. If you want to see me in my element, put me in a US Mexico game, and you'll see that my truest form. Like I evolve into a different person. So I typically only go for Mexico, but for the Olympics, like I just think like the athletes in general, I'm just amazed by them. I'm like, wow, like this is just amazing. Like what you are doing right now is amazing. So I'm not super into the Olympics, but I will go mostly for Mexico, but I will recognize talent when there's talent, right? Like some of the athletes you watch, you just can't even believe it. So for me, that's really important is to recognize that. I was really, really excited to watch the track and field. And now I'm not excited at all. I don't even want to look at the TV when it's on. I'm super mad about it. I'm a runner, so for me, like, man, I was just so pumped. I was like, I cannot wait for Richardson to run. Like, I'm so ready. Like, this is going to be amazing. And I'm so disappointed. So I won't even be watching that anymore. I'm like, nope, I can't.
But who
And
are
then
you
I'm a,
disappointed in?
sorry?
Why are you disappointed in? Who are you disappointed in?
I mean, there's too many levels of disappointment to like the system. I'm super disappointed in the system. I think it's super unfair. And I I just I could not believe it. I think I'm still in disbelief about it. So yeah, I will not be tuning into that. But I will be tuning into watching Guillermo Ochoa, the goalie for Mexico, because I love Guillermo Ochoa. He plays for America, and I'm not an America fan, but that's okay. He is probably one of my favorite athletes. I I don't even know how to explain it to people. I'm just like, I love Guillermo Ochoa. He has the same name as my brother and my dad, and he is so nice and he is so good. And when you watch him play, like he is just so in the zone that I just can't. Like I'm like that type of energy that he brings, and he's so humble. I'm just like, I love Guillermo Ochoa. Like, so I'm really excited to watch Guillermo Ochoa play in as the goalie. I'm a huge fan. But I will not wear an America shirt, even if it has his name on it. It's not happening. But, you know, if anyone wants to get me a Mexico shirt with Ochoa's name, I'll definitely be wearing it. But yeah, that's usually who I go for. And then European
Well, let me say
soccer.
something just real quick for those that don't know Mexican soccer. America is a team in the Mexican Premier League. It's she's not talking about
En la liga.
as in USA.
Yeah,
So
no.
because we are talking about both countries and
Yeah, no. I
they
mean,
have the same.
I don't like American soccer at all. Like when they did not make it to the World Cup, I've never been more happier in my entire life. I think I audibly cheered. Like I
What
was
you mean is
so
you mean USA
satisfied.
soccer? Sorry,
Yes,
I want
USA soccer.
I want to
Mexico
make
definitely
sure.
went. No, definitely no. Mexico qualified. Let's be real.
No,
No,
I'm just making a
USA.
distinction between Club America and the
Oh yeah. So the
Mexican
USA soccer
and
team,
the
the men's soccer
USA.
team. Yeah. I was so happy. I was like, it was so good. I just could yeah. I don't think I could ever compare it to yeah, I've had very few moments like that in sports where I was really happy. But I will say the women's team is really good, but they also are not diverse. So it's really hard to cheer for them. I can't do it. I just really can't. And I'm a huge MLS fan, but even MLS is more diverse than the national team.
It is, you know, what got me on the women's team, because I felt the same way when Megan Rapinoe talked trash about Trump. That was the hook for me. I was like, okay, I'm invested now. Let's see who this is and what she does. But that's what it was. Because yeah, up until then, I was like,
Right.
I don't. It doesn't look like, doesn't look like.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are certain players and athletes that I can really admire. And I really am like, wow, like you are an athlete and you say you're using your platform to promote social justice. And I love that. But the USA soccer, I just can't. And to hear that like coaches will tell women and men in colleges like, hey, you should play for like if you have like like if you're a dual citizen, you should play for the other country instead of the USA. I just think I just can't believe that. Like if that the fact that stuff like that still happens, I'm like, wow, that's
I
I don't know
mean,
what's happening, soccer.
you know what? Then so be it. Let's get these talented college kids.
Oh,
play for
100%.
yeah, countries.
Yes, for
Mm,
sure. But it's one of those things where
I know.
I just can't believe it. I'm like, what is happening?
Hmm.
But like I said, I am a huge MLS fan. I'm an LA Galaxy fan, and the Dos Santos brothers have been on the team. Well, Giovanni's not on there anymore, but yeah, oh man, I love the Dos Santos brothers too. I'm
Is it
like,
strange to be cheering for LA as a San Diegan? Because I feel like,
oh, I know.
you know,
I
that's the
feel
one, that's the
guilty.
one thing. Because I like to cheer for them, but I'm like, that's LA though.
I
You know,
know, but it's the closest thing I
I know,
have.
I know. We have the DC United, but again, I don't have a connection in DC yet. You know. Yeah.
No, don't do DC.
And ignore the MLS. Cheer for Cholos.
I
Cholos
know.
de Tijuana. There we go.
Yeah.
That's our closest team.
That's true.
Does Yucatan still have a team in La Liga? Or did they get relegated? Because I really like Yucatan. I don't know if they're any good though.
I thought they got relegated a while ago.
Yeah.
A while back, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, where I'm from, San Luis Potosí, we have a team now.
You're from
But
San Luis Potosí?
yeah, I'm from San
Okay,
Luis
I knew that.
Potosí. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
where my mom's
yeah.
from.
Yeah. What did you say?
That's where my mom is from.
No way.
I know that. Yeah. Yeah, she's from near Rio Verde or San Siro, like one of those two.
What?
Yeah, that's where my mom's from.
Okay, family.
Okay. Where are you from? Where
We're from San Luis Potosí, San Luis Potosí.
Oh, okay.
So we're
Okay.
from yeah. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you've had like okay, there's a lot here. All right. You've had the
Yeah.
enchiladas that people don't think they're enchiladas because they
Yeah,
don't look
yeah.
like the enchiladas that people think.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. I did
Mom
not
doesn't
know
make
that.
those anymore though. We've only had them when I've gone back with her there.
Yes, my mom
Yeah.
also doesn't like to make them, and we only get them when my grandma comes and brings them for us. So, but when I tell people they're enchiladas, they don't believe me because they're not what people think the traditional enchiladas are. Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
So both of my parents are from San Luis Potosí.
Okay, nice. Yeah. My dad's from Nayarit, but yeah, my mom from Rio Verde.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
See, Nayarit, that's where my mother-in-law is from. So see, we're all connected.
You've got connections here, right?
We're all family now. Yeah.
All right. Well, last thing, because it's 4:58, which means that we need to see this all-star game because the first batter for the National League, who is the highest vote getter, is what is happening?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the life I'm living in Maryland. Swag chain.
The fact that you have one
baby.
and Mr. Carr and I don't have one and we're in San Diego.
Well, I do. My kids made me one for Father's Day. Hold on.
Oh, that's true. Get it. Go get it.
This is
actually a gift from my son.
homemade version. By my kids. This was my Father's Day card.
That's amazing. That is. Oh yes.
Still
I
on
love
my
that.
battery stuff, and we took a picture. So
Yeah.
Fernando Tatis Jr., the most popular player in baseball, who is actually being challenged for popularity by Shohei Ohtani from Japan. Most popular player in baseball, the guy on the cover of the video game is a San Diego Padre. And he is the first batter for the National League. He was the highest vote getter. It is a good time to be a San Diego. We only have one sports team. That sports team is now good and relevant and has cool people from all over. I think we have a ton of Caribbean players. We have all-stars that, we got Jake Cronenworth, who's from Michigan. We have Manny Machado, who is Dominican from Florida. We
Captain
have
Machado.
Huh?
Captain Machado.
There you go, the Minister of Defense. We have Fernando Tatis Jr., who's actually from the Dominican. We have Yu Darvish, who is half Japanese and half Arab. And Mark Melanson, who's just old, but he's an all-star and does his thing. So we are well represented, and our team is representing internationally. So it's a good time to be a Padres fan. I've had the honor of going to Padres games with both of you within the last month. And so it is a good time to be a Padres fan. But it is actually time for us to stop if we want to see, because I'm getting text messages that just showed Tatis in his uniform. They just called him out. So I need to go see him hit a home run real quick.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'd go for the food.
and go for the food and you stay for Kim?
Well, yeah. I'm like, hello.
He's not an all-star yet, but
I've only seen him the times that I've gone this year. He's only played once. It's the day after my birthday. So thank you for that gift. Mr. Carr gave me those tickets.
Nice.
Yeah, so thank you. But yeah, I haven't seen him since.
I'm going on Saturday. They're playing the Nationals out here on Saturday.
Oh, you better wear that. You need to take pictures, wear the chain.
This is my son. He will be wearing this.
Oh yes, you need to send us photos.
And with all that extremely heavy metal on him, he's gonna also be like, a lot stronger wearing that all day long.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So this was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for going into some deep parts that, some things that some parts of your identity and your experiences that I think will be great for our viewers to be able to relate to and be inspirational.
I hope it was okay.
That was great.
Okay, thanks.
Great.
I'm like,
and it was needed.
Cool.
And so, thank you for sharing that. I won't say that I'm proud of you because I've been corrected. I am proud to work with you.
It's not about being corrected. It's like, it just sort of feels like, we're not in a position. I don't feel like I'm in a position like I'm proud of you. Like, it feels, I don't know. I'm losing the word here for that.
No, I mean, I agree.
Presumptuous. Like it's not for me to say I'm proud of you anymore. Like we're equals. It's like I'm just proud
to work with you.
You're with us.
Call you a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. On that note, let's go and watch baseball. Let's go see.
Bye. Have a good one.